This is going to be a class where we'll need a ball that's a firm ball. So it could be a tennis ball, a therapy ball. This is a tune-up fitness ball. You also want your bolster horizontal across your mat, so it's back from the wall space. You don't have to have the wall for a while. A couple blankets behind the bolster, a block at the back, and then a belt. Just let it layer across the block. Okay, so you'll have an easy reach for it, I hope. If you're one that doesn't put your arms back overhead, you could put the belt to the side, okay? So you're gonna start sitting on your bolster. You're gonna put the ball down towards the, so it looks like it's besides, if you put it down, it's besides if your left leg stretches down, because you're gonna actually aim to sit on it. And your other massage ball could be used as well if you decide this is too much intensity, okay? So I want you to actually sit, so that left buttock, the part that you want to put the ball to press into, is going to be not around the curve of the rear, but higher up in the connective layers into the, I think of it as more hip, not so much like glute, but it's kind of glute hip. I'm trying to find a name for the two. So I'm going to sit on the ball and see if I can land on it. Put my elbows on the bolster, that's key. And then I'm going to put my body weight and make circles so that there's both pressure, but it's not too much, right? You want to find that balance between movement, circulation, and pressure. So if it doesn't feel like it's that painful, you could put it in a little closer to the center, the glute medius. But I like to do both circles and then kind of let my hips go side to side. So see if you can find a spot on that left buttock area, glute area, that's a little sensitive, and maybe just stay with that spot and feel the hips move side to side and let the body glide the connective tissue on that ball. Okay, so maybe you feel a spot and you just kind of hold that. An optional extra move would be to put that right foot on the left knee. But I found that this, to me, is not that helpful. Additionally, I found that just laying on the ball was enough. Okay, now sit off of the ball, put it over to the side, sit upright next to the bolster, place your massage ball behind you on top of the bolster, center of the spine, that you can tell is your center. And then I want you to lie back into that. Be careful that the ball doesn't just roll off the bolster. So you have to kind of pin it to your clothing a little bit. And then I want you to shift your body side to side. See if you can let your wrists relax and massage across that posterior core so you're turning. I think you've done things like this with core work, where you have something between the knees and you're twisting, or you're trying to lift and twist. So we do this for a few moments until kind of the ball leaves usually. Okay, it's not necessarily a specific spot, it's movement. And you might bring your hands behind your head and lean back into the ball and make sure that your head is being held by your hands. Okay, come back up, but see if you can lift up center so that the core chamber has some connection to sitting up versus your neck, okay? So you might put your elbows on the bolster. If you're taller than me, that won't work very well. You probably have your elbows by the sides, but you'll work your way to sitting up and then taking the ball, the small one, under the right buttock. You're sitting in front of the bolster on the floor. You lift up your hips and slide the ball under the right buttock. So remember, it's glute. It's the glutes. And there's so many different patterns of circulation in that area when you push into the ball. So feel movement, maybe circling, so you can find how you connect to your arms on the bolster. This I find to be a little tricky with my neck, so I really have to dig my elbows into the bolster. And then sometimes I'll just sit onto that ball and let the hips go side to side, just to massage into the glutes, into the side band of the glute, not so much exactly a hip. Okay, and just do a few more moments of it. Okay, and then get a feel when the feet are walking forward. Some of you may have done that crossover, just finding a way to get some blood flow into the hip and the glute. Okay, now sitting down from the ball, we will be using it again, so I want you to keep it nearby. You're going to lean back into the bolster, take a block, flat, lift the hips, slide it underneath the back of the pelvis, get a sandbag, bring your head down to the blanket so you don't take any more pressure in your neck. Make sure your head is on enough support. This one, it would be okay to use plenty of blanket, right? This is not one where you need to do less blanket. So if you need to scrunch it up, straighten the legs and move the sand across the upper leg, thigh lid, but feel if you separate your feet, you have a little bit more width. It might feel better around the knees. Okay, so you could flex your feet, you can relax your feet. I love having the wall. This actually feels wonderful for connectivity. I want to be a little closer to it, but I will adjust here. And then feel the arms open. If you notice where your belt is, we'll be getting that soon. But I want you to stretch out the chest for a few moments and sort out the influence of breathing with your sensation of letting go of tension. And if that means you need to bend the knees for this whole portion, that is just fine. So participate with the movement of the breath in that rib chamber. And feel when the ribs have motion. Some of us tend to work on kind of the pumping idea of the core body. Move it so it's like a three-dimensional experience with your breath. Expansion and centering. It's kind of floral, I guess you could think of with your breath. The dynamic is expansion and back in towards the centerpiece. Now, if there's a possibility, you can relax the face. There's so many muscles in the face, right? So if you're not talking, you can actually relax them. So breathing in for a count of 4. Exhaling out for a count of 4 to 5. Feel the shoulders back, broadening the chest. Okay, now if your legs are extending, you'll probably keep them extended. And if they're bending, of course, maintain that balance for your hip. And then slide the sand away and reach back for your belt. And we're going to lift it so our hands hold the belt a little wider than shoulder width. It's very much an angle that works for you. Some of us, the angle will be farther back. Some will be straight up over the chest. Some might not want to look at the belt, so you'll bring it behind you so you still feel the arms activated. That's fine. Slide the feet in. Bring the feet together, the knees out into cobbler's pose. And just notice if you butterfly the legs, like lift and lower them, noticing when you get to an established center of the pose, you can feel the position of the feet and the adductors, the inner legs, the circulation in the inner leg. Now, kind of visualize and energize would be probably a good word. Energize the awareness that there's something between your feet. It's hard to get an object down there right now with all of what's going on with the belt and lying back on the bolster. So I want you to slide the feet a little bit apart, like there's enough space between it for that little ball. So you activate the inner leg, the lymphatic here a little bit, stretching out. And then you'll lift up the knees, and the feet will probably push a little together, and let the bottoms of the feet touch into the ground. And move the right knee in towards the chest. Now, you don't have to use your belt to position the knee and draw it in with the hands in the belt and the knee. I'm preferring that you have the belt straight above the chest, or if that doesn't work, a little bit behind, but anywhere it's easy. Now stretch the right leg straight down, let the foot hover over the ground. So it's not touching the floor. It might touch a wall, I guess. And then bring the right knee back up and then step it down. So alternate, left knee in, breathe. Exhale, leg stretches down, hover the foot. Inhale, bring the left knee back in center. Exhale, step the foot down. Inhale, right knee goes in. Exhale, right leg stretches straight down, hovering it above the floor. Inhale, right knee goes back in. And then foot down. So it's 2 knee pulls in on each side, right? It's not just one. The place that I find people get a little scattered with is that hovering. And then what you do with your pelvis when you hover the leg. So let's try one more on the right side. Knee drawing in. And then when you stretch the right leg down, feel the opposite foot pressing, feel the back of the pelvis, a little bit of a motion of the tailbone under, and then right knee down, back in. You're probably ahead of me on this one, foot down. Okay, last side. Okay, try to do a little wobbling as possible, even though you might not feel like you're wobbling at all with the pelvis. Just center the knee back in. And then stretch your arms overhead. Knees are both bending. My selection of spacing with the arms changes, right? So right now it feels good if I stretch them a little farther out and deliver that circulation to the breathing muscles. But hey, we're going to keep going with that. So relax your grip on the belt, let go. And then as you lower down the arms, I want you to slide the block that's underneath you out to the side. And then you're going to try to let your twist and side stretch come in so that your hips are still buoyant. They're a little lifted, they're hovering. Buoyant hips. Okay. That's such a great word, buoyant. Okay, so let the hips, like you're wagging your tail to the right, and then you're going to roll into the bolster with that left side band. And then bring that left arm between the props while you're getting ready for side sage. The bigger ball works on this one, inside the right leg. Okay, I'm glad we have these. And so we add our sand in respect to our shoulder. So if you get a feeling that your shoulder is sensitive to the movement, have the sand at the hip. Or you can put the sand higher. It sometimes falls off when it's here. Okay, this is probably a for sure thing. Now, when you lean into that left side, I'm very interested in if you use the block overhead. You can position it higher. Okay. My belt is still stuck to mine, but you can position the block as high as you want. And I've also seen where people find it helpful to move the block to one side, which this one will be over towards here if you look back to your right. So it's a little easier on the shoulder joint, the whole structure that wraps around towards the upper back. If I go straight behind me, that to me, it's a little tricky some days. And then if I move it over to the side, it's better. Or the hand could be to the bolster, to the other hand. This is kind of nice to do. Trying to get that hand to the other hand feels interesting. I can interlace my fingers. That's a good one. It's a good deltoid stretch. So you choose. Now, maybe this action is too much. You're not interested in action. You're interested in restoring. Okay, so you decide on your prop setup with a block or no block. And then most important, let the left side of your face be on that blanket and relaxing the muscles in the face. And that includes around the eyes, so maybe closing them. Experience the breath in the ribs. You can always adjust the arms, so, and the legs for that matter. The extremities are very interesting. You could feel the left knee closer to the bolster. You could feel it slide a little farther down. Nothing wrong with that. It's trying some variations on how it feels in your waist and your spine. For me, if I slide my left leg farther down, it feels a little more vulnerable in my lower back. And if it's closer to the bolster, it feels pretty centered. Okay. Let your head relax into the blanket. Breathing slow. Now feeling where the waist stretches, right? Is it your ribs that feel most of significant awareness, or is it anything in the front core? Kind of that band from the side waist drawing towards the lower core or the back. You know, likely the back space is protective, right? Especially the lumbar vertebrae. So this one you might find a little limitation on feeling movement there, because you're not going to feel breath in that space as much as you would in the front body and the belly. So let's work a little with that, with hands and knees and cat-cow. So I want you to remove your sand, and you're going to turn likely towards your bolster. Okay, so turn to the bolster with your hands and knees about, you might find that the idea with shoulder and hip distance just doesn't need to be your focus. Feeling your awareness with your hands down, or maybe it's fists for you. It might be better for your joints to have it in a fist. After you do that for a while, you get used to it. And it feels good. So my knees are set out, the spine is centered and arching, and the waist reaches. Okay, so get a feel of the arch of the spine in towards chest forward. It's not cat pose, right? It's cow pose. Okay, and then you're going to push into your fingers out wide and round your back and move your chin towards your chest. Let your chest move down. Feel if you can do movement of the chest through and down towards the bolster before you push your brain forward. So I find this interesting. I move my chest down, and then I reach the hips back and the chest forward. And then round your back. Okay, so let's take it a couple more times. So again, I notice if I just push my hands and just arch and round, I'm losing some of this movement of the side channel, which helps my shoulder. So I try to work with reaching the torso forward. So spend the energy on that. Lengthening, reaching the gaze up, and then come back to table. Okay, let the feet scoot in, the knees scoot in, the toes hook under. Lift the knees up. Alternate bending the legs. This is key. So stretch out your calves. See if you can spend a good 4 to 5 bends per leg. So alternate stretching the lower leg. I feel all of it. I feel all of my back line, but I do feel a little bit in my lower leg when I bend the knees one at a time. Okay. And now walk the feet back, then lower down through the knees. Push the bolster quite far back so that when you lean your hips down to it, you actually feel the front rim of the pelvis stretching. You could have your palms down. You could bring your elbows to your blanket, which to me feels a little better for my wrists, but I'm working on that length in the front. Of course, if my hands are down, it's going to feel like more significant length. But if it hurts your wrist, then you would be here. Yeah, if you have a kind of, molecules of I'm in pain, it's probably not going to help the whole situation end up in restoring. So just consider what you need. I'm pushing into my elbows. It's a variation, or the hands down. Okay, now come out of it. If you're on your elbows, walk your hands back. Come back to cat, round the back. Chin moves towards the chest. And now when you go from that rounding, you notice it's a bit of it's an interesting shrug. Okay, now when you move the heart down and the hips back, then you come into that natural arch. Okay, now let's go to side stage on the right hip. So this hip's going to go down to the front of to the edge of the bolster. So you're going to tip down into it. You're going to have your blankets. And if the block is behind you for use, get it close and add a ball. This is a good one. Yes, I haven't really used a tennis ball for this in a long time. This is what we used to do. So maybe I'll add that some other time. But for now, side stage traditional. Okay, so I lean in, and the place you would likely want to approach to relax into is your neck. Okay, all these other things have enough hardware around them, right? As far as the size of the muscles, that it could tolerate a little bit more iffiness in your pose, but the neck doesn't do well with that. It needs some support. So I'll make sure the blanket is high enough. So you might fold your blanket again if you like, or keep it low. If it's low, you don't move it, be sure that you're letting the weight of your head relax into the blanket. And then notice if the weight of that left leg is supported by the ball. You can kind of use your right foot to negotiate the support. Waist lengthens. Great. And then that left arm either stretches over the side of your face towards the block, or it's down by the side. You could go any variations of ways. Yeah, the shoulder is kind of interesting, isn't it? If you compare that joint to the hip, the range of motion is really all over the place, huh? And the hip is a little bit more guarded in some ways. So feeling where that arm feels connected, but also a sense of stretching the mid body because of where the arm is. It still could mean my arm is on the other arm or the bolster. Now, I like to let my head turn. I just tend to look this way to see the screen, but you might want to be deliberate about your head resting on its right side on the blanket. And every dose of kind of gripping, near your jaw, see if you can let it go. Yeah, this musculature in the jaw is quite interesting. So let that relax. Breathing. Now, when you lean into that right side, are you leaning into the hip? Are you leaning into the ribs? The hip is kind of in a spot where it doesn't have the same amount of connection as the ribs do to the cushion. So it's a nice area that you can kind of move around. You can kind of move your hips, even in this shape. So we're going to work on extremity circulation coming up, the lower extremities. So when I let my body weight lean to the right hip, okay, try to let the left leg kind of stretch down. Take the sand away. See if you can let that left leg kind of reach downwards towards the wall, and then lean into the right side and come up. Let's see. Let's take our block that's behind us to the side. Pull your 2 blankets next to your bolster. And if you're worried about this belt, actually, you might use it coming up. So take a seat on top of the bolster, and let's get the tennis ball or the little ball. So blankets are stacked behind you. Not so sure about the belt yet. I'll find out. Now, if you were to use this ball under the calf, it's just not going to do much. It does something. There's a little blood flow from it, but this is definitely interesting. So you'll take a block, you're going to put the ball on top, and then on top of that's going to be your calf. And that whole strip of the back of the leg, it's a pretty varied terrain. But for most of us, if we kind of use the ball underneath that left lower extremity, the ball might fall off the block. You might have a little bit of challenge in the beginning, but you're sitting on the bolster. It's as awkward as could be with your hips because one leg could be straight or bending. I think I like the right leg bending and scooping under towards foot to the bolster. That's my preference on this one with the legs. But I want you to work with leaning into it. Okay, this is why the belt could be helpful. So when I lean into it, I have the ball kind of center of the block. It's not, I suppose you could make the block higher for this one, but the ball wouldn't have as much, real estate to be on. But I want you to flex your foot, so toes back, and then point the toes. If you're near the wall, you might move a little bit back. Okay, so you might move the ball down underneath the lower extremity. If you feel like you're just close to that spot, but you're not quite getting in there. So I find that I just appreciate where it is right now. And I can add my belt under the foot. So I just try to lasso in my foot there. It works out sometimes. And pull. Yeah, I think I prefer no belt on this one, to be honest. But what I do appreciate about the belt is I can pull, lift the heart, and lean forward into it. Okay, you choose. The last few moments go with it or without the belt. Kind of feel. We are going to use the belt for a heron pose in a moment. So you decide if you want to squiggle back and forth, kind of down the whole strip of the calf, right? You're going through the power strip of the calf. When you go this way, you go back and forth. You might Humpty Dumpty off your bolster, but at least you got some blankets behind it. It happens to the best of us, for sure, falling off our bolsters. Okay, so take a moment where you're a little lower on the calf. Okay, make circles with your foot. Go internal or external. Most of us go external during the day, so a little internal is probably good for us with our foot turning in. Kind of depends on your posture, though, doesn't it? Go both ways. Okay. You don't have to draw your name with your foot. Those are good exercises. Draw your name. Okay. So now, taking the belt, you don't have to have your legs straight when you do this. You could bend your right knee, your left knee, sorry. This is a good one. I'm just coming up with this as we go. The block is underneath the ball of my left foot, so I get a little bit of calf stretch. This depends on your knee, right? How far forward your block is. But you try to press a little bit forward. I like that. It's interesting on the hip flexor though. Okay, so you're going to scoop up your foot with your belt, your left foot with your belt. So I'm going to slide it under right to the ball of the foot, and I'm going to kick forward, kind of scrunch my toes over that belt, and then straighten out the bottom of my foot and lift up, flexing, lifting, flexing, lifting, and then feel when you're holding on that circulation purely through the back of the left leg and maybe in the left side of the spine. So you might close your eyes and kind of scan the terrain of circulation here. All right, the practice is really interesting. Circulation doses in the body, it's pretty therapeutic, right? So this is a very specific meridian line we're working on. Bladder meridian, urinary bladder versus gallbladder. Okay, so when I pull, I'm trying to use the position of my spine and my neck straight back. I'm not trying to bring my chin down or push my head up. Okay, now bend the left knee and then feel if you can, in midair, just kind of right in the center, take the belt off. So you've got to use a little bit of your core here to hold that. And then stretch your left leg. Wait a minute, don't take it back yet, sorry. Okay, bring the left leg over the right leg. I want to get this, every one of these parts around. Left leg over the right leg. Take a twist to the left. Okay, thank goodness for memory. Okay, so hook through that right elbow. You can also hold the leg with your right arm. This feels good to me today, holding versus the hooking of the pushing in my elbow. So you might feel like this is the way to go, pushing, and it causes a little bit more strenuous activity in the body, but feel if you can hold and center the sitting bones. Take a few moments here. I'm turning left. I'm very clear about it. At least now I am. Okay. So feel where that left knee moves towards your body versus out to the side. It's not going to be outer body. Turn back forward with the chest and then move the left leg behind you. Okay, now we're in pigeon pose. I got that. So you've got your blanket. If it feels like too high, you can always slide one away. Might be too comfortable. And we move forward on either 2 blocks or on the floor with our hands or our elbows. And you're going to be deciding that. So if I lower down, right, it's a little more of a hip stretch for me. If I'm a little higher, I feel some circulation in my left hip flexor, right? One of the flexors, the quad. Okay, and I also like the invitation into my back strength. So I'll go with it because it's good for my spine to do these motions. But for some of you, you might be really wanting to get that hip stretched a little further. So you'll lower down to your elbows, or you could lower down even further onto your forehead on your hands. Right? Some people go. So they put their hands, stack them, forehead down. There's still elbows in the mix on that one though. Okay. And you know what I haven't tried with this ball would be kind of massaging in that lower arm. Would be kind of good to do. These are definitely neglected zones in our body, right? Our lower arm extremity towards the wrist. So anyway, that's homework for you, huh? All right, do that while you're trying to write something. Okay, so as we take the last few breaths here in pigeon pose, feel where the balance of circulation is in your breathing. So if I'm up here, this is a little stiffer for my breath, right? I can't get the long breath. This is a little easier for a movement of breath. Okay, now come around. We're going to go to the other calf. So just getting right into it. Bring the left leg forward. The block is flat. The ball is on the block. Simple. Okay. So one other thing you could do between the two sides is if you want to kind of reach with your hands squeezing, so a little bit of petrissage. So you could get a hold of the calf and kind of stretch it out. I prefer moving kind of gently forward and back. But you could do a little both. Sometimes just leaning into it, flexing the foot, circling the foot. You might even just stay in a still point, flex and point. Oh, it could be different sensations on the second side. Could be about the same. Ankle could be a little crackly. Getting some movement in there. Popping some bubbles in the calf, in the ankle, right? That's that sound. If you got any of that going, whatever. But when you move the ankle, feel if you flex the foot. Notice if you try to turn the toes in, turn the foot out, but then you want to really just let the body push into that ball and squiggle side to side. So any of this blood flow is going to be helpful. Okay. Now we'll get our belt. We'll reach it under the right foot. I'm just going to keep moving my foot around. Try to let my body weight lean into that lower extremity. Just lean in and then see if I can catch a foot. Okay. So now as I grasp the belt and I pull the toes back, lifting up with the spine, flexing, you're going to lift up that right leg. You know what I kind of missed on this one was a sandbag on the thigh. Okay. No class goes by where you could have done something better. Never, ever, ever. How many classes have we done together? Improvements continue to happen, but we sometimes forget. So feel when you lift up. If you want to add, you can put sand on the left thigh for the next two poses. But feel the lift, feel where you lean back and you're a little bit off balance. So you're kind of rolled under in the sitting bones. Okay, now bend through the right knee, move the heart towards the leg. Okay, now bend the knee a little bit further. Now last time we kind of hovered in space. So just take the belt off the right foot, hold that right shin with the left hand and see if you can cross the leg to the side of the left thigh, to the floor. If this just does not work, you definitely can use a block under your right foot and do the same exercise. No problem. Okay. So I sometimes like that because it changes my my reverence kind of from my ribs, rib reverence. If I'm here, I feel a little bit higher up in my rib space. And this I like too. It's just different lower back. So hug that right leg in with the left hand and then turn. You can hug the leg in. You can reach your left arm across to the leg and press. It's entirely up to you. Okay, now feeling when the bones are centered, the angle of the knees. This is such a good position for our hips. How the left knee stretches down, how the right knee points up, and the proximity here in the joint, so that open space in the hip. So even if you simply sit this way and you take a rotation, work on the lift of the heart. Breathing slow. Okay, relax your pressure with that left arm. And then as you turn back forward, and you take that right leg and you lead it behind you. Keep in mind, this is positioning in the hip on the left side. So when I lean down, I'm going to stretch my right leg back, lengthen through my waist forward. So maybe that idea of getting the leg as far back is not as important as your core body, because we want to work on that stability in our back muscles and then into our spine. So what you might like is this lift. You might not particularly really like it, but after the class, it will feel good in your back, right? That's one thing that we know with these chest openers. Okay, and if you want to lower down and feel a little more perplexed in the hip, right? You could put the elbows down and shift. Sometimes this feels pretty good, right? Into my left hip, back corner of the hip. The right leg can be heavy. It could be bending, descending, breathing slow. Just feel the ribs expand and contract. Now we're going to come around to work at the wall. So I want you to shift your hands and feel where there's a natural arch through the spine. So pushing up. And then when you come around, you could push back to downward dog if you're feeling energized to do that, especially after massaging into the calves. That can feel good. But what we'll do is we'll swing the right leg forward if you're opting out of the dog pose. And you'll put the blocks, I want them to be on the sides of your mat anyhow, kind of towards the other side in a second. So turn to bring your feet to the wall. And let's start out with a crocodile pose. Okay, so what we'll do is have our blankets. You might have one under your knees. My feet are next to the wall, they're right at it. You'll have your bolster. Other blanket goes off to the side. Can't think when we're going to use that again, so I'll put that aside. I want you to have the bolster straight forward. And, you know, I'm not so certain if you're going to want the blanket, but let's see. So let's bring the knees on top. You want to be right at the wall, though, with your feet. This is going to take me a little time, maybe not you, but for me it will. Okay. So I want the bolster to be as much on the thighs as possible. So when you aim forward with your thighs and your core on the bolster, you're going to work so that your feet are pushing into the wall and your knees are off the ground. So if your bolster is underneath like your chest area, you might push it lower. I don't want you to have discomfort in the chest here. So I'm going to kind of lift up and be on the bolster. Like I'm going to go swim out to sea. Okay, surfboard pose. That's probably what this ought to be called. Crocodile's pretty good, but surfboard is better, huh? All right. Now bring the elbows to a position out from the bolster. So they're out to the side. It could be elbows wide. Could be hands touching towards each other. Let's do this. Let's get our sand or a block. It could be either one. Or a blanket, whatever you can put under your forehead. And take a few moments with your forehead down. That's too low for me. Sorting it out here. The ball would probably be perfect, the massage ball, but you will certainly have little indents in your forehead for quite a while if you use it. It has this amazing ability to do that. Okay. So elbows down, forehead on the block or the sandbag or bunched up pillows. And then take about a minute and a half here to work on the pressure of the feet into the wall. And the reach of the hips, so you don't have to have your hands on the ground, I suppose. You want to feel that there's a measurable pressure back into the wall. The hips are centered. Okay, the only error I find in this sometimes is I tend to pull in the front of my thigh too much, so I have to keep pushing back into my heels. This is probably indicative of posture when I walk around or stand, is why my hip flexors can get tighter. So I'm really working on my heels, pressing. Yeah, most of us find that if we do postural study, right, it's really working down into your heels is important to feel the heel. Okay, slide the hands back, elbows by your sides, forehead stays down. Breathing. Okay, the hands can slide back so they're off the ground, palms facing towards you. Shoulders back, Shoulders back. It's an always consistent reminder on the shoulders back. Okay. If someone would pull the shoulders back, it would be great, huh? We need assistance on this one. Okay, now the upper back muscles are waking up. Okay, so hands down, handstands, huh? Come up to the thighs, shift back, move the bolster off to the side. Take a couple blocks under your hands, one on each. Step the right foot forward. Stretch the back leg so that you're pushing and lifting the knee off the ground. Now play a bit with the heel, reaching to the wall so that you're kind of striking a stretch into your foot here. Right, so my heel is a little up and I'm against the wall with the heel. So I'm feeling a little momentum. Step the left foot to the right, step the right foot back to the wall. Get a little momentum going. Step the right foot to the left. Take a ball, the bigger one, okay? Place it between your knees, still stay forward. And then I want you to feel where the thighs stretch down and towards the knees. You're going to stand up, but you'll have your ball between the knees. This is kind of important. It's not any higher or lower. Oh, mine's about ready to pop out. Okay. All right. Stretch up with the arms. You can see half of me, I know, but lift the arms up. I want you to lengthen the legs now. If the ball pops out, get it again. Bring it back. Squeeze into the ball between the knees. Lift up the arms. Stretch the front torso up and back. Okay, now hands reach around to your hips. Okay. Don't try to walk like this, that's for sure. Okay, and then you'll move the hips forward. Now you could use the block instead of the ball, it won't pop out, but the ball is a responsive surface, so I like it for these. Okay, now feel where the hands are around the back of the pelvis, the hips are going forward. Okay, turn the hands so the palms are down at the back of the pelvis, lift the chest. The thighs are probably really responding now. Okay, now lean forward, tilt halfway, bend your knees. Now the ball makes more sense. The knees are working a bit. Stretch your arms forward. Don't go too far down with the squat. Just be cautious of this. So it's not about that I'm going to go lower and bending my knees. I'm moving my hips back. That's the more important part, is the hips back. Okay. Now, lower down, have the ball still there, but the blocks besides your feet. And you might have to adjust the ball if it's kind of popping out. But feel where the feet are parallel, toes forwards. Feel that you have just the ball as a spacer. It's kind of hard to squeeze into it in this position. It's a little tricky. Yeah, if your feet start turning out, you got to bring them back into parallel. Breathing. Bending the knees, take the ball, put it out to the side. Unless you want to balance it on the top of your head. Take the blocks up, step the left foot back and move yourself to the wall. If you've moved away, you might have moved away. And I want you to reach the toes so the right foot flexes. The left heel could be at the base of the wall. I'm going to try to get mine all the way to the floor. You can have it lifted up, the left foot. Yeah, flex the right foot. I guess you're flexing your left foot too, huh? Yeah, pretty large flex of the back foot, even though it's flat. Okay, now as you feel the chest move forward, right foot tries to stay flexing. If the foot doesn't want to, just bring it on down, that's fine. At some point it will fatigue. Okay, now lower the right foot. Try to keep the back foot parallel. If it turns out, I'd rather have you lift the heel a little bit up at the wall so it's parallel. Okay, so if the left foot turns out, put the heel a little higher. Otherwise, you're going to work on stretching that back calf and ankle, reaching the torso forward. You can micro bend the knee or knees. Breathing. This is good stuff. Now the blocks could be forward, they could be farther in under your shoulders. You have to kind of monitor the sensation here. Okay, bend the right knee. Now you're pushing off of the back foot, so lift up the heel. You don't want to lose what you got out of that stretch. So I lift the heel, bend the right knee, and then I just step it to the right foot. Take a forward bend. So the hands could be on the blocks wide in front of you. The hands could be holding the elbows, feet a little wider. Your hands could hold the back of the calves. Head straight down. Breathing, lengthening the back. And feeling that inner environment. Just slowing down here. And now hands reach to the blocks, slide them back, right foot steps back, and then feel when the left foot, the toes lift up, the reach down into that right heel. Okay, just a little bit more of this active work, and then we'll get back onto our backs again. But you want to feel where the toes are up, and the back heel it definitely could be up at the wall. Some of us, it will work better with the heel up at the wall, and some it will work better with the heel down. Yeah, feeling how you push into your blocks. They happen to be 2 blocks. Okay, now lower the left foot and keeping the balance of the right heel down or up at the wall, stretch the torso forward. Now notice how the neck tends to try to lift to move the torso. So feeling where you're neutral with your neck. Okay, so working into the lower extremities. It's pretty obvious. I feel both lower and upper extremities on here, not just my legs. I feel some amount of work in my mid-body, trying to levelize my hips. Something I left out of the conversation, leveling your hips here. Don't wag your tail on this one. Putting a little weight bearing into our lower spine and our hip. And now feel when you bend your left knee. This next time, we're just going to lower that back knee to the blanket. And you'll step the left foot back and you'll take a version of child's pose that works for you. So you can have your elbows down on the floor. You can have your hands forward and your arms straight, but the knees are wide and the forehead is down. I prefer this pose with my forehead on a bolster, always. For me, this is where I really prefer. This is forehead on my bolster, hips are back. So get a feeling of that support. Some of you might be sitting back all the way onto your heels, I guess, but find what works for your back to open up into your hip. You know, you can feel how this works in the hip, interesting. So we'll come up and we'll do the same kind of action on our back. So I want you to slide the bolster aside, sit down on the mat, and then take your blanket to the back of your mat. Your feet will be at the wall. And let's, I kind of went back and forth on this one with the bridge pose. I want you to have your bolster, let's have it on the side of the mat, to the right side of your mat. Okay, make sure there's plenty of room over there so you can slide it back and forth. Your blocks will be with you. May your blocks be with you. Okay, they're close to you. All righty. Okay, so we're going to take our belt and we're going to lie on our back and be on your blanket under your head. Now it doesn't have to be this flat, I suppose, but you can have your blanket folded one more time. Most of us are working on the alternate motion of our neck, not forward tilting. So probably letting it lie back and just deal with that. Unless you've got some jaw pain, you can have it higher. So bring your feet up, your belt in your feet, and bring your knees wide. So it's happy baby pose like we just did with our child's pose. The alternate same awareness in your pelvis is this pose. Okay, from baby to child, but now back to baby. So have the feet, when they are out wide, feel the flex of the feet and feel the spine gently stretch. Now, I find this great because I can feel the difference after having practiced for today for a little while. Where my hip feels different on this one. So instead of my knees squeezing towards each other, they're apart, right? They're moving apart, but they probably try to go a little in because this is tough on, it's challenging on the hip. Okay, so have the feet wide, so they're in a wide stance. Strengthening out into the hip, feel resistance. So if I pull with my belt, I pull my hands on my belt, not pull, well, I am pulling with my belt, I suppose. I'm getting resistance. Okay. Even better if you have a TheraBand, that would be good too. Okay, so slide the feet together so they're straight up, flexing. What else could they do, huh? In this position. And get a feeling of the spine centered. Okay, it's simple. Now, when you bend the knees, you take the belt off. We're going to bring your feet to the wall. You might feel when your feet go up to touch the wall, your tailbone. So kind of notice the tail action initially before you get too active on fixing everything. Just kind of feel as you push into the right side of the tail or the left tailbone area. Okay, so be close enough to the wall. Have your blocks nearby. I'm going to scoot a little closer in because we're going to try bridge pose. The reason I'm scooting in is so I have better lift in my back. So the higher my feet go, the more massage through my spine. The farther back I am, I can't get up very much. So you can tell the proximity. Some of you have done shoulder stand with your feet at the wall and you know what I'm talking about. You try to get really close, then you keep walking up. So you're going to push your feet into the wall and you're going to lift your hips up. This is closer to shoulder stand than bridge, isn't it? You can feel that lift. So I want you to alternate lifting and lowering, and then you're alternating for a little bit of time to figure out how close you want to be to the wall. My elbows are by the sides. Try to get some circulation through my spine. If you get close to the wall, I bet you're going to shift back just with the traction movement. Okay, you can move your arms with this. You can have them down by your sides. You can move with it, arms overhead and down. Okay, but feel, good work. So feel how the movement of the spine is. It works kind of with the hips. Okay, so we'll take a block and we'll place it under the pelvis when the hips are up. This block for me is on the second setting, horizontal. You might decide to get 2 blocks under your pelvis. Okay, so I'll show first the variation that's simple. Moving my feet walk down the wall, so they're on the floor next to the wall, toes stretch up. So my toes are stretching a little bit. Okay, shoulders are bent down and in, palms open. Okay, option 2 would be feet step up at the wall. Remember, you need to be close because how are you going to get higher if you don't get closer? You can take 1 block low. Okay, you got to be sure that you're comfortable with this in your spine first. So what part of the spine is doing the work is really your lower back first. I put the blocks, stack them flat, and then slide my feet down. It's actually pretty pleasant in my hip flexors. Okay, if you like this, but you're not so sure this is the right one for you, you could always slide back, farther back on your mat, and let the feet touch at the base, right, at the wall. So the soles of the feet. This I like too, although it's probably going to be better for my back if my feet are higher. You've seen this version done with a bolster under the ankles or bricks. Okay, don't turn your head. Don't do what I'm doing. Not good for my neck. Shoulders down and in. Arms straight down towards the wall. Right, this works a lot into your circulation, the sinuses and your endocrine glands, your thyroid, parathyroid, thyroids, glands, right, in the sides of the thyroid. And so if I work here, stimulating the circulation, And you decide if you don't like this idea of the feet straight like this, which I imagine nobody will, you'll have your feet on the floor. It's not the easiest version of it. You have to be pretty close to the wall to get that, to kind of stick that shape. You think you got to go lower, but usually it's a little bit higher. I know you could aim your, you could watch yourself in the screen if you have your video on and see where you're at. These are good for some things. Okay, so keep that openness at the hip. Remember, your feet can be on the floor just as well, just as well. If it hurts your hip to hold it up, don't do it. Stretch the hip out. And now we're going to fine tune this last 10, 15 minutes of practice into the hip and inversions. So we're heading to that time. So if your feet are at the floor, I want you to bring them back up to the wall to get out. But if you decide, no, I'm good with my feet down, that's okay, right? So it's up to you. If I put my feet up and I lift up my hips, it's a little bit of a workout, but then I just lower my spine. Either way, feet down or feet up, and come down to my back. Okay. Now we're taking a moment where the knees go to the chest, and we bring the knees out wide, and we hug around either back of the legs or around the knees. And if you want to use your sandbag at the back of the legs, some people like to go on the shins, but if your knees are like really amazing, never had any issues, then you could put your sand here. It's just going to be kind of sheer pressure at the knee. So this is a little safer probably. Take the blanket. So if it's flat, you're going to fold it up one more time. Slide it in under your head. Only under your head, not under your shoulders. Okay, and then when you work with this sanded hamstring event, you can feel how the back kind of irons out. Let the eyes center and feeling the breath in your back space. You can scoop the hands. If you have sandbag with handles, this can be kind of effective because you can relax your hands. This might be your homework pose. This and the ball under your forearms. Okay, rock a little side to side. Try to get that rocking motion. And if the sand is too much, you can always put a block or a ball between the knees and go side to side. You don't have to use this version. It just changes it up and massages into the digestive tract. Just what you wanted right now. Okay, now when you come back into center, weight back into the pelvis. You'll slide the sand away momentarily and let the right leg release down. Now, even if you touch the wall with your foot, it'll probably be okay. Because what you're doing is you're going to cross the left leg over to the bolster on the right side, taking the larger massage ball to the sacrum area, placing it there, and then maybe your sand on the outer left leg. Now, if you're getting kind of tired, because there's been a lot going on today in class, you might go with or without the sand here. You might feel like it's just strenuous to add. Sometimes the addition is centering for the circulation in the hip. So naturally the left arm opens, the right arm relaxes, and you let your head rotate to the left. I know you could use that tennis ball or the TheraBall under your head at the occiput and get a little massage there with that, but sometimes that's just too many things to do. Consider the slow breath and that movement of the ribs and the lower belly. A few more moments, noticing if the left shoulder is rolled a little bit under to open the chest. Enjoy when you let your head roll back in towards center. Now feeling the center of the chest open. And then slide sand, move the ball. And when you get your legs back towards center, you could bring the knees up and in. You could bring your feet to the floor and windshield wiper. I prefer windshield wiper just because I haven't gone onto the right hip yet, so I want to give some even support one side to the next. But when the knees shift side to side, feel the centerpiece, knee center, and then taking the bolster to the left side of the mat. Cross the right leg. Now you might have to shift your hips over to the right side of the mat, then reach the right leg over to the left and balance. The ball, I guess it's not really balancing the ball, but it's squishing the ball, and add the sand to the outer right leg. Yeah, if any of these crossovers just feel too much in the moment, you can always hook the foot to the ankle, the right foot to the left knee, and kind of hold the knees to the chest in figure 4. There's variations you can work with. This is a little bit more basic, right? Because you're simply letting the line of the spine, kind of the vine of the spine, have its natural contours. And then you let your head roll to the right. Relax the fingers. Stretch the movement of breath. Now, is there anything you're holding? Like, is there any hip holding? There might be some reservoir of gripping in the body. So just noticing areas that you can kind of unclench. You know, clenching is its own form of kind of inflammation, you could say. And it happens in practice because we're doing so much action and then relaxation back and forth. So see if you can let go of the clenching areas. Letting your head roll to the right. Now moving the ball aside and sand, slide the sand towards the wall, push it downwards. And then once you bring your knees over to the side, we're going to go right to legs up. We're going to do a good 4-minute legs up today. So shift over and taking your blanket, and let's go minus that tennis ball. If you're interested in putting it under your head, let's keep it simple here. So we'll use the bolster next to the wall flat. If you want a blanket on your core, even if you're warm enough, it might be nice, just because it's a little bit of weight and it's supportive, right? It brings you into a little bit more direction internally. So we'll sit with our seat with the rear, right? The sitting area of the rear next to the wall. So I'm trying to lean down into my left thigh. You could be on your right thigh. So let's say your left shoulder is more sensitive. You might start with getting up from the right side. Okay, because it's that arm that slides under, and you have to kind of swing the legs up and play with this one. See, because I can almost roll to the other side and fall off my bolster. So the more kind of play you have with it, the better you're going to get at this for balance. So feel where the sitting space is towards in orientation to the wall. And you might get as high as you can. Now, if you are having any challenges like breathing wise, this pose would be really kind of difficult, like sinus congestion. This would be a difficult pose. So it's a good pose when you're feeling well, not so good if you're not. So noticing that this is an important kind of recharge pose. So if it feels okay with your breathing right away, stay with it. All right, but you're upside down, so it's gonna sound fun when you're upside down anyway. Bend the knees, scoop up the sand with your feet, stretch the legs up the wall. Feel the orientation of the feet apart. Make sure the knees have some separation, so if they're squeezing together, right, you want to have some length. So you might do a micro bend of the knees. I try to get a really good extension of the legs, get my sand, so I feel comfortable with it. So that varies a bit towards the center of the foot. Okay. Get this one right. You might push your heels out versus the toes out, so that'll keep the knees apart. And then adding maybe not, a blanket, another sandbag. Okay, a pet. All right, so feel where the support is, and then let your arms open out with the chest circulation balanced. Feel the relaxing of the fingers. Feel the movement of the breath and the ribs. And stretch the breathing muscles. Notice the in-breath for a count of 4. Belly expands. And the exhale, lengthen it out. Really feel that alternating stretch inside the body of the breathing cycle. Now the exhalation might be the mystery part, even though it's the yin part of the breath. It might be, just feeling the end of the breath. Tracing the movement of the diaphragm in the front down towards the abdomen. And then the abdominal organs have that resistance of its movement, its pulse down. On the exhale, the abdominal organs can rest and relax. Great position to massage the organs, strengthen and tone the core of the body. Now, if you have the sand on the feet, shift the feet from the wall, bending, and then moving the sand off of the feet. Okay, feel where the knees bend and noticing the knee caps, right? Their positioning and the flexing of the feet. It's kind of a neutral foot position. Now, if you have compression in the center body, if you have a blanket, this is a nice extra circulation to this digestive area. But at some point when you slide that away, it's kind of nice to feel that space again, not pushed into. Hold the back of the legs and feeling that the legs have that pressure into the digestive tract down. You don't need anything outside. You have all of it just right here. Legs connecting to torso, breathing. Okay, so keeping that low back waistline, the kidney area expansive. Think of that when we come up to sitting. So expansive, spacious, low back waistline, roll to the side, and feel like you roll. The more you get rounded when you come around is good. Kind of roll around in a ball. And then take a seat on the bolster. Feel that space in the back. You could do a little bit of kind of tiny kitten calf, right? A little rounding, a little lifting through the back. And then find where you're in between the two. I don't know what creature that's going to be, but somewhere in between the two. Hands on the thighs, palms open. And feeling the circulation in the chest, see if you can gently lift up the chest, shoulders towards the wall. Breathing in, feeling support from practice. Kind of visualize that connection to the community of practice together, and bring the hands up, place the palms together, inhaling and exhale, bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste.